Okay, we are with the ECHO Turkey Director, Jane Lewis. Mrs. Lewis, please give us about the numbers about the EU and Syrian refugees issue. What is the EU support about the refugees issues in Turkey?
The European Commission in Turkey today is supporting Syrian and other refugees under the Facility for Refugees of Turkey for 3 billion euros. The ECHO office here in Turkey is managing 1.4 billion euros of that amount, and we're primarily looking at humanitarian affairs.
And how about under these main numbers, what is the main issue? Education, water supply, or accommodation? What is the main issues under this big number?
Sure. When the EU and its member states made this money available, so the 3 billion euro package under the EU-Turkey statement, we looked at the most acute humanitarian needs in the country. So the 1.4 billion euros that I referred to are looking at primarily basic needs, so the needs of rent, food, water and sanitation at household level. We're also looking at access to education. We're looking at special niche services in health, like mental health and physical rehabilitation. And we're also looking at protection across the country.
And how about these days? All 1.4 million is already spent, or how much already spent into Turkey?
The 1.4 billion, which is only the humanitarian side of the 3 billion package, will be fully contracted by the end of the year. Right now we've allocated, you would need to check the figures, but about over 700 million euros have been already dispersed. So we're well on track to actually contracting all of the available monies under the Basic Needs Program, which is the Kızılay Card Program, which is the delivery of monthly cash allowances to refugees across the country. We already have about 1.2 million beneficiaries on the program.
Mm-hmm. And there is something always complained about from the Turkish government side. Turkish government side always complain about the EU didn't give exactly that support. EU didn't give exactly that 3 million budget. What is the reality about your side?
As I mentioned before, everything will be contracted by the end of the year. That is a firm commitment that the EU Commission and the Member States have made. What I can tell you is that the programs are up and running. It has taken some time because bringing these programs to scale in a country the size of Turkey for 3.5 million refugees is not an easy thing to do, but we're working hand in hand with our Turkish counterparts to make it happen.
And after the end of the years, this year, this budget will be finished. What the next about? There is any next project, like next budget?
The current programs will probably run until the end of next year. Some will run into early 2019. We are still waiting to see what political agreements will be made between the EU and Turkey.
It's this day EU and Turkey relationship a little bit tough. Do you expect any real good budget from the ECHO side, or you are looking as a pessimistic side or optimistic side?
In humanitarian affairs, we've always had excellent relationships with the Turkish authorities. We're working, as I said, hand in hand with them, whether it's in the cash programming, whether it's in health, whether it's in education, even protection with the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Family, DGMM, AFAD, others. The relationship is extremely positive and we're working in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. As a 1.4 million budget, you also work together NGOs. Sometimes Turkish government also complains about that issue too. What's going on about the NGOs side? How many NGOs working with you, and what is their goals about the Syrian refugees issue?
We're working with a number of international and national NGOs in Turkey, primarily in the health and protection sectors. We're working with dozens of different NGOs. It's true that there have been some difficulties in terms of the regulatory environment and NGOs seeking certain permissions from different line ministries and the central authorities, but we've been working very closely with the authorities to try and find solutions, and we hope we'll be able to find a solution soon.
Do you have any numbers about how many kids able to go to school, or how many families able to get good accommodation facilities?
The latest statistics from the Ministry of National Education is that there's about 600,000 kids currently going to school. Under the Conditional Cash Transfer for Education program that ECHO is funding, we have hundreds of thousands of kids currently receiving the card and being able to access the formal and education system. But there are at least 400,000 kids still waiting to be integrated into the school system. So we're working hard with the Ministry of National Education to find solutions for that. In terms of access to safe shelter, I think was your question. What we've realized with the ESSN, the Kızılay Card Cash program, is that the vast majority of the cash assistance that we give to refugees is actually going to rent. So we're already making a little bit of a dent in that regard in terms of facilitating access to safe and adequate shelter, although we know that it's still a huge and persistent gap across the country.
As a last question, you also working with the Syrian refugees face to face sometimes, so you know their feelings about Turkey. Turkish people feeling worried about because of Syrians won't be go their country again, not return their country. What is your feelings? Syrians wants to stay in Turkey, or whenever Syria getting political solution, they want to return their country?
I think it's very difficult to generalize across such a large group. Our sense is that people have been extremely well received in Turkey. They have access to health, to education, to employment, even citizenship in some cases, which is not the case in many refugee crisis situations. That said, we do have a general idea that most Syrians want to go home. The problem being is that the war is still ongoing in Syria and we don't know when that's going to end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For answering this.